Tonight on Bridge City News, the death toll in the horrific New Zealand mosque shooting sits at 49, but could rise with some of the wounded fighting for their lives. We'll have reaction from a local Muslim leader. The Ontario provincial government announces some changes to their education curriculum, including sex education, math, and increases in class size. And the University of Lethbridge Pronghorns were eliminated from the University Cup last night. We'll have an update on that competition. I'm Paul Arthur, sitting in for Hal Roberts. A white nationalist armed with at least 2 assault rifles and a shotgun is the suspect in the deaths of at least 49 worshippers attending Friday prayers at 2 separate mosques in Christchurch, New Zealand. He wore a helmet camera and live streamed the massacre on social media. He also posted a manifesto on social media identifying himself as a 28-year-old Australian who was out to avenge attacks in Europe perpetrated by Muslims. He said he chose New Zealand to show that even the most remote parts of the world were not free from, quote, mass immigration. Witnesses inside the mosque described the horrific scene.
It was like 10 to 15 minutes of continuous shooting. So, yeah, and then I came to the main road again, and by that time the police has arrived and ambulance came to rescue the people. Those were injured, and the dead people was inside the mosque and outside, because the gun shooter, when he was inside shooting and then he came out, he was changing his he was changing his gun, and then he went again inside, and where the people were visible in the road on the street, he just he just shot all the people those were inside outside of the mosque. I'm so scared, I knew that it's maybe one of the safest place to live in. But now I don't know what will happen.
Many of those who will have been directly affected by this shooting may be migrants to New Zealand. They may even be refugees here. They have chosen to make New Zealand their home, and it is their home. They are us. The person who has perpetuated this violence against us is not. They have no place in New Zealand. There is no place in New Zealand for such acts of extreme and unprecedented violence.
Facebook says it has taken down a 17-minute-long live stream video of the shootings. YouTube and Twitter are also working to remove video of the shootings from their sites. Lethbridge Muslims and non-Muslims gathered today at the Lethbridge Islamic Center for a special ceremony to show love and support for one another in the wake of the mass shootings in New Zealand. President of the Islamic Center, Abdel Basit Abarawi, says the phone calls of condolences have been overwhelming, and he's happy his family lives in a safe country.
Personally, I would feel always safe, and I am very overwhelmed this morning with the number of phone calls and messages from Canadians who are conveying their condolences and supporting us. And as a matter of fact, lots of people are coming today. They wanted to support us. They wanted to stand in front of the mosque to show the Muslim community that they are well supported here at Lethbridge.
The head of the Quebec City Islamic Cultural Center is offering condolences to the families of the 49 people killed. Bafelja Ben Abdullah says it's time to speak out against extremism in all its forms. The attacks in Christchurch come a little more than 2 years after 6 members of his community were killed by Alexander Bissonnette. A now-deleted Twitter account linked to the New Zealand suspect shows an assault rifle magazine with Bissonnette's name written on it. Meanwhile, Dutch police have detained 2 men in Amsterdam they think helped provide the weapons used by Islamic extremists to kill 130 people in Paris in November of 2015. The 29 and 31-year-old men were detained Tuesday following an investigation by French, Belgian, and Dutch detectives. The 29-year-old appeared in court today and was ordered detained for 2 weeks while the second man was released for health reasons. Our local MLAs and Mayor Chris Spearman announced funding today for a major upgrade on the Highway 3 bridge over the Old Man River, which will see the bridge expanded to 3 lanes.
Investing in this new bridge is primarily about public safety, but it will also create good jobs here in Lethbridge. There'll be an estimated 308 direct jobs and 221 indirect jobs generated during the construction of this bridge.
And we thank the province of Alberta for responding in this manner today. Supporting the economy, supporting the city of Lethbridge is supporting all Albertans. And this is a tremendous and much needed investment.
The project will support 308 direct and 221 indirect jobs, with construction expected to begin in 2022. The University of Lethbridge Pronghorns had the home crowd advantage, but were faced with the daunting task of playing the defending University Cup champions, the Alberta Golden Bears. Ainsley O'Reilly has more.
The University Cup coming to Lethbridge is essentially a homecoming for past Pronghorns coaches and players.
A lot of the players I haven't seen for 4 or 5 years. Some of them I probably have not seen for 10, 15, some of them maybe even for 20 years. And it's great to see some of those players, and players like Dana McKechnie, whose son is on the team, and Scott Orban, whose son is on the team. So it's great for those players, those people to come back and be able to mix with their people that they played with.
It's absolutely unreal. It's kind of unbelievable when you think about 25 years passing. I'm sitting here and my son's going to play in this game, and some of these old kindred spirits and friends that we've built such an amazing story with over the years come back together, and it's like we've never really left. It's awesome.
The game itself was physical, a blowout 7-1 victory for Alberta. The Golden Bears were favored to win, with 10 players having played at least one professional hockey game. The Pronghorns lost with humility.
I give them a lot of credit. Very good team. I give our team a lot of credit too. I'm so proud of the guys in that dressing room. It's been a tough 2 years. It really has. We lost a good member of our team, Brock Hirsch, last year, and I know he's proud of us. A community member, Logan Boulay, we lost too, and I know he would be proud of us as well. I'm really proud of the boys in that room, and yeah.
Very detailed in their execution on the ice. I thought there were times where they really took advantage of some of the free pucks that we presented for them, unfortunately from our standpoint. And good teams take advantage of those situations, and they're the reigning national champions for a reason, and maybe that reason alone, they make you pay.
Toronto Maple Leafs head coach Mike Babcock and former Lethbridge Pronghorns head coach says that once you've won, it's easier to do it again. The Alberta Golden Bears have done just that, 7-1 the final. Pronghorns head coach Murray Nystrom says that they were challenged at playing at the national level. The Golden Bears have 7 players with over 250 points in the WHL. For Bridge City News, I'm Ainsley O'Reilly.
Pancreatic cancer has one of the worst cancer survival rates. Only about 9% of those diagnosed will make it to the 5-year mark. It is a tough battle, one a Lethbridge woman knows all too well.
I'm going to fight this, and I'm going to keep working.
It's hitting too close to home. 3 years after her mother Donna's pancreatic cancer death, Deanna Dotz can still feel its mark. Now, with Alex Trebek's announcement last week, Deanna can't help but think of her mother, Donna.
She got her diagnosis, the official diagnosis, on October 28th of 2015, and she passed away on January 28th of 2016. So 3 months for her. It was pretty quick.
Pancreatic cancer is the 4th leading cause of cancer death in Canada for both men and women.
To know that 4,800 other families are potentially going to experience that this year, it's hard, because you just go back to everything you went through in the recovery process. And
Aretha Franklin and Patrick Swayze, just to name a couple of celebrities who died from the disease. And now.
So help me. Keep the faith, and we'll win.
It just takes you back to that moment when you first found out. When my family first called me to let me know that she had gone to the hospital and they found a tumor.
Hoping the awful news of another high-profile diagnosis can bring awareness.
My mom was born Italian in a very Italian family. So if you weren't loud, you weren't heard. And everybody knew my mom because she wasn't afraid. To Alex, to you, fight. Fight for every person that's lost this battle. Fight for every person that might have to go through this at some point, and help us figure out a way to fix it.
For Bridge City News, I'm Loris Alexander.
If you were walking through Henderson Lake Park today, you may have noticed a giant hole in the ice. The Lethbridge Fire Department created the hole to train firefighters in ice rescue.
They're simulating self-rescue situations. If they fall through the ice, how are they going to get out and rescue themselves? Using, if they have a tool with them, or if they don't have tools, because it's different strategies to get out of the hole. Then on the other side, they're simulating that they're going to go out and make a rescue using the ice rescue board that we have. And so they simulate going through broken ice, then out across good ice again, and then into make the patient's rescue.
To get to the person, if they can help themselves, we get them to try and self-rescue as much as possible. If not, we get in the water as well. We have a board that we can put under them, and we'll effectively rescue ourselves. So we'll get the person on the board, we'll get behind them, and then if ice is broken and there are multiple holes, we can safely get that person to shore on a board.
The training happens once a year, and 40 members of the fire department will take the course. A 35-year-old Lethbridge man has received a 2-year jail sentence in relation to a drug bust on the north side last February. At the time, police searched a home along 20th Street North and discovered drugs and a handgun. Dalen Strombeski pleaded guilty yesterday to possessing drugs for the purpose of trafficking and possessing a prohibited weapon. Neighbors had expressed concern because the drug house was located just a block away from an elementary school. The other person charged in the case, Billy Ann Paulette, will be back in Lethbridge Provincial Court on April 11th. An Alberta Party candidate wants restrictions on anti-abortion protests near elementary and high schools. Angela Kokot made the call after a small group of protesters held graphic pictures close to a high school in Calgary that upset some students and parents. Current provincial law does place a bubble zone around abortion clinics, giving them a 50-meter safe zone from protesters. However, John Carpe of the Justice Centre for Constitutional Freedoms points out such displays may be shocking, but they amount to freedom of expression. Ontario Education Minister Lisa Thompson announced today that the provincial government will make some changes to the math curriculum and to sex education while increasing some class sizes.
I'm proud to announce our government will implement a new math strategy over the next 4 years. Under our math plan, we're getting back to the basics, less ideology and more skills. Our strategy will emphasize financial literacy by finally including it in mandatory curriculum in high school. They need to know how to respect one another and themselves. They need to know how to use technology safely. And quite frankly, they need to know what healthy relationships look like. That is what our new age-appropriate health and physical education curriculum will do. Some concepts were being taught way too early. So we're going to raise the age on some concepts. But I assure you here today, we are going to keep them all in the curriculum. From kindergarten to grade 3, we propose no changes to class sizes. And in grades 4 to 8, an average increase of just 1 more student in each classroom. Our older and more mature students in high school would see the most change, with class sizes increasing to 28.
Former House of Commons Sergeant-at-Arms Kevin Vickers announced today that he will be running for the New Brunswick Liberal Party leadership. Following a stint as Canada's ambassador to Ireland, Vickers is seeking to replace former Premier Brian Gallant, who lost power last fall. Vickers has deep roots in the province and a long career of public service, including 29 years in the RCMP. The federal government has finalized a deal that will deliver millions of dollars to a remote Indigenous community to help tackle a housing crisis. Ottawa says the agreement signed yesterday represents an investment of up to $12.8 million in the Cat Lake First Nation. The Cat Lake Band declared an emergency in January, saying terrible housing conditions in the community had led to severe lung and skin ailments, especially affecting about 100 children. The Fly and Ojibwe community of about 450 people is about 180 kilometers north of Sioux Lookout. Former Justice Minister Jody Wilson-Raybould has posted a letter on her website saying she intends to run for re-election in Vancouver-Granville this fall as a Liberal. It's not clear if Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is going to let her do that. Wilson-Raybould quit the federal cabinet several weeks ago, claiming the Prime Minister and his staff inappropriately pressured her to help engineering firm SNC-Lavalin avoid a criminal trial. The New York Times is reporting chilling new details about the final moments of an Ethiopian Airlines plane. Right after takeoff, controllers saw the Boeing 737 MAX 8 tilting up and down and moving unusually fast. Sources say the jet accelerated beyond its safety limits and that the captain asked to return to the airport in a panicky voice. ABC News is reporting a 737 pilot came forward after a similar Lion Air crash last fall, citing a tense meeting between Boeing executives and pilots who claimed they were left in the dark about a new automated safety feature on that plane. British Prime Minister Theresa May will be spending the next few days trying to persuade opponents to support her European Union divorce deal after Parliament voted to postpone Brexit. Britain is scheduled to leave the European Union on March 29th and faces a chaotic no-deal exit after Parliament rejected the withdrawal agreement twice. The House of Commons voted yesterday to ask the EU to delay Britain's exit, which requires approval from the remaining 27 countries in the bloc. Berlin's Tierpark Zoo introduced its 3-month-old polar bear cub to visitors today. The female cub, born December 1st, was allowed to venture out of her indoor cage for the first time. She ran around with her mother, Tanya, and even took a dip in the enclosure's pond. It's time for another Movie Mill Minute with the owner of the mill, Len Binning. Len has a look at some of the movies playing this weekend.
Comedian Tyler Perry is best known for his role as Medea, and he brings his successful series to a close with his final film, Medea, A Family Funeral. Let's take a look at this comedy.
You're about to get shocked. This is the church. If you come up here with that bull, I don't mind busting you in your face, start asking Jesus to forgive me. Oh my God. I'm a real thug. I'm an OG, MADEA. Are you ready for a miracle?
Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse took the Oscar for Best Animated Picture this year. It's a story about Miles Morales, a Spider-Man in an alternate universe. There are 5 other alternate universes, but there's one common enemy.
My name is Miles Morales. I'm the one and only Spider-Man. At least that's what I thought.
You ever hear of the Super Collider? You're gonna love this.
Dimension opening now.
You're like me.
That's impossible.
It's really looking like spring is actually on the way. Lots of sunshine and rising temperatures coming our way. I'll have a look at the forecast in just a moment. Here's a look at our forecast. Tonight, clear skies with a low near -5. A great weekend shaping up tomorrow. Sunshine with a high near 6. Sunday warming up 3 degrees to +9. Monday much the same with a high of +9 again. Tuesday sunshine and even warmer at +13. A beautiful day on Wednesday, sunny with a balmy 19 degrees. Thursday sunshine and 17. Looking at the almanac, the average high for this time of year is 6 with an average low of -7. Highest temperature on this date recorded in 1979 at 19 degrees. Our record low was -29 in 1958. Sunrise was at 7:46 and sunset at 7:35. Let's see what temperatures will be like across the country tomorrow. Vancouver will have a mixture of sun and cloud and should see a high near 11. Much the same in Victoria, sun and cloud and +11. Sunny and 6 is on tap for Calgary and Edmonton. Clear skies and 2 for Regina. A similar day for Saskatoon on Saturday, 2 and sunshine. For Winnipeg, a chance of flurries and -1. Flurries as well for Toronto and a high of +3. Snow and -1 for Ottawa tomorrow. Montreal, a good chance of flurries and 0 in the Maritimes. Fredericton, New Brunswick will have periods of rain and 6. Halifax, Nova Scotia had a rainfall warning today. And for tomorrow, there's a good chance of rain once again and 10 degrees. Charlottetown, PEI will have periods of rain and 8. And in St. John's, Newfoundland, expect rain and a high near 4 degrees. An analyst at RBC Dominion Securities is advising investors not to be alarmed by Air Canada suspending its financial guidance for this year. The move follows Ottawa's decision to ground the Boeing 737 MAX aircraft in the wake of Sunday's Ethiopian Airlines crash. Walter Spracklin says Air Canada's suspension was not unexpected and that, more importantly, it doesn't impact his firm's longer-term view of the airline's shares. Home sales across the country fell 4.4% last month compared with February of 2018. The Canadian Real Estate Association says the average selling price of a home dropped 5.2% on a year-over-year basis to $468,350. Excluding the Greater Vancouver and Toronto areas, the national average price was just under $371,000. A government-appointed panel says Ontario's energy regulator is in need of an overhaul to strengthen public trust in its work and better adapt to technological change. In a report being issued today, the three-member panel recommends the Ontario Energy Board should have more independence. It also recommends the board should streamline rate change applications and adapt to better address technological changes in the energy sector. The OEB sets rules for energy companies and establishes rates that consumers pay. Bank of Canada Senior Deputy Governor Carolyn Wilkins says Canada's household debt, now more than 178% of disposable income, is the central bank's top domestic financial vulnerability. She says Canada isn't alone, pointing to the combined global debt owed by governments, businesses, and households amounting to $240 trillion US. Wilkins says high debt loads can amplify the impacts of any economic downturn. Now here's a look at today's markets. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, the death toll in yesterday's horrific New Zealand mosque shootings sits at 49, but could yet rise with some of the wounded fighting for their lives. Hal Roberts spoke with our parliamentary reporter Ray Fillion about Transport Minister Marc Garneau's decision to ground the Boeing 737 MAX 8 planes, and more on the Jody Wilson-Raybould SNC Lavalin story. That's next. But first, here's a look at what's happening in and around your community.
Here's your Bridge City News Community Calendar. Looking to sell some extra items after decluttering your home? Come and sell your old treasures at the Windy City Bazaar Flea Market and Yard Sale on Saturday, March 16th from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. at the Royal Canadian Legion in Lethbridge. This is also open to small home-based businesses looking to sell and market their products. For vendor inquiries, email lethbridgewindycitybazaar@gmail.com. And for more information, check it out on Facebook, Windy City Bazaar Flea Market and Yard Sale. Redemption Prison Ministry is holding a fundraising dinner Thursday, March 21st at Trinity Reformed Church in Lethbridge, with doors opening at 6 p.m. Come for a delicious dinner and discover what God is doing in the prisons through this amazing ministry. Please RSVP by Monday, March 18th by calling Chris at 403-317-3950. or email Chris V at trinityurc.ca. Do you have a heart to serve our community? Streets Alive Mission is looking for volunteers to help serve hot meals, assist with Foot Friday, and help sort incoming donations. Visit streetsalive.ca to fill out their volunteer application or call 403-320-1159. And that's your Bridge City News Community Calendar.
Many around the world are still grieving following the tragic crash of an Ethiopian Airlines jet, which claimed the lives of 157, including 18 Canadians. Joining me now via Skype is our parliamentary reporter Ray Fillion. Ray, Transport Minister Marc Garneau had to make a pretty tough decision grounding the Boeing 737 MAX 8s.
It was a tough decision because this plane is widely used by Canadian Airlines. Air Canada has 24 of those planes, WestJet 13. We're told by some experts that Canada has one of the highest proportions of those planes per capita. So it was a big economic decision, but quite frankly, I'm kind of surprised the decision wasn't made sooner, especially after on Tuesday, hour by hour, you could see the list of countries growing, the list of countries that are already banned or taking some sort of measures to ground those planes around the world. Canada and the United States, quite frankly, were the last two holdouts in the world, and we're being told by the transport minister that there was no political pressure to keep those planes flying here in Canada. You know, some suspected that the Americans, because Boeing's an American company, they were putting a lot of pressure on Canada to keep the planes flying. But Marc Garneau, the transport minister, says that's not the case. I was also surprised that up until the very last minute, before his news conference on Wednesday morning, the transport minister's intention was to explain to Canadians why he was going to keep those planes flying in Canada. He had scheduled a news conference for Wednesday morning here in Ottawa in the National Press Theatre on Parliament Hill, basically to answer reporters' questions about his decision to keep the planes flying. But at the very last minute, just a couple of hours before the news conference was set to begin, he says that he got some new information, some satellite information showing some disturbingly similar patterns in the flights of the Lion Air jet that crashed in late 2018 and the one that crashed in Ethiopia last weekend. Basically, the pilots have been fighting the software on those planes. The software was giving conflicting information as to the position of the nose of the plane. And because of that information, that misinformation, the pilots in both cases apparently overcompensated, which made the plane basically nosedive and, killing so many people. So the press conference, which was scheduled for 11 a.m. on Wednesday, ended up being pushed to 11:30 and then 11:45. And that's when the transport minister announced the only logical decision, which was to ground those planes until further notice. And as we saw just a few hours later, the Trump administration followed suit, grounding the planes. And the president actually thanked Canada for its cooperation. He said that the American authorities actually got a lot of information from Canada. They also provided a lot of information. So a great example of cooperation between Canada and the United States. But quite frankly, like a lot of people, I was surprised that it took so long for Canada and the U.S. To ground those planes.
Now we just have to talk to Trump about those tariffs, steel and aluminum. We'll get to that in just a moment. Ray, there was some fireworks recently when the Justice Committee abruptly shut down when Tory and NDP MPs discussed bringing back former Attorney General Jody Wilson-Raybould so she could tell the rest of the SNC-Lavalin story.
Yeah, because opposition parties feel that she didn't get to the bottom of things. She actually issued a press release, a statement last week saying she was more than willing to come back and answer some more questions. She issued that press release shortly after Gerald Butts, the Prime Minister's former Secretary General, gave his version of events. So this week, all opposition parties called for an emergency meeting of the same committee, the Justice Committee of the House of Commons. It was set to last 2 hours, but after only 24 minutes, the meeting was adjourned. As a matter of fact, as soon as a Liberal member of that committee, Francois Drouin, got a chance to speak, he proposed a motion to adjourn the meeting until Tuesday of next week. And the Liberals having a majority on that committee, of course, that motion easily passed. So that triggered a lot of nasty words. Opposition MPs, especially Conservatives, accused the Liberals of a cover-up. One MP from Alberta, a Conservative MP, Michael Cooper, said he has never been so disgusted at the tactics, he said, employed by his Liberal counterparts across the table from him. So what this means is they're going to debate the issue again as to whether or not Jody Wilson-Raybould will get a second kick at the can, another chance to testify before the House's Justice Committee on Tuesday of next week. Problem is that meeting is going to happen behind closed doors. It'll be an in-camera meeting. And Tuesday, as you know, also happens to be budget day here in the nation's capital. So not a lot of people will be paying attention to what happens, what's going to be talked about at the Justice Committee on Tuesday of next week. The Liberals are clear. They want to move on. They want to turn the page. They don't seem to have any interest at letting Jody Wilson-Raybould speak again. Question is, she doesn't necessarily have to be in front of the Justice Committee to speak, to give her side of the story. She could perhaps call a news conference or give an interview to a media outlet. Question is she going to do that? It remains to be seen. I tried to contact her office yesterday, but nobody answered.
Ray, the ethics commissioner is on sick leave for an extended period of time. How will that impact things?
Well, that was the big question. As soon as we saw the notice from his office, they announced on Tuesday afternoon that Mario Dion, the new ethics commissioner, is taking an extended leave for personal reasons. We hear he's sick. And obviously, Mr. Dion just recently announced that he was commencing an investigation into the whole SNC-Lavalin controversy. So one of the first questions that came to mind is, will that mean that the investigation into SNC-Lavalin, the whole Jody Wilson-Raybould controversy, will it be delayed? All his office would say is that the work of the office continues despite these exceptional circumstances. There was a rumor on the Hill the same day that he was seriously ill, but he did speak with the Globe and Mail saying he had an unplanned major operation in the hospital, apparently something unexpected, that he's doing well and that he hopes to be back at work within weeks. And he said in no way will it compromise his investigation into the SNC-Lavalin controversy. We still don't know when that report is going to be ready. It's going to take at least 6 months, so certainly not before summer, I expect.
So, Ray, our Prime Minister spent the better part of his March break in Florida, where he had the locals talking, didn't he?
Absolutely. There's even a local TV station near Fort Myers who decided to go look for the Prime Minister, who's vacationing with his family on an island called Captiva. That's where he decided to spend the better part of March break. I say the better part of March break because he went there. He flew on the government Challenger. He flew down to Florida on the weekend, then came back on Monday evening because he had a series of meetings we're told he couldn't have by phone or by Skype at his office on Parliament Hill. So he spent the day Tuesday here in Ottawa and flew back the same night to Florida to join his family again. So he's been spending March break week over there. The kids are not at school, obviously, and a local TV station sent a reporter looking for the Prime Minister. Apparently, there's a lot of excitement on Captiva Island about the Prime Minister of Canada. And what I thought was funny is that on their website, NBC2 in Fort Myers said that the Canadian Prime Minister is vacationing on North Captiva Island to escape a scandal back home. So the SNC-Lavalin is also making news down in Florida. That's what happens when your Prime Minister is a superstar, right? You make the news when things are right, but when you're involved embroiled in a scandal, it also makes international headlines, and this is what we're seeing now with the whole so-called laugh scam story.
But you know what? Perhaps it's better on an island off of Florida than the Agacons Island. Maybe a little safer for the Prime Minister.
Yeah, we remember that controversy from a couple of years ago. Yeah.
Ray, the House resumes sitting on Monday after a couple of weeks off, and it'll be a pretty big week. Tell us a bit about that.
Absolutely, because as we discussed a few minutes ago, the opposition parties are outraged that the Liberals wouldn't let the Jody Wilson-Raybould return before the House's Justice Committee. So they don't want to let that issue go away. They say they're going to be back, and if need be, they're going to try and get her to speak before another parliamentary committee. Justin Trudeau is expecting, I'm sure, a lot of questions on the issue of laugh scam next week when the House resumes in question period, as he's going to be facing his Conservative opponent, Andrew Scheer, after a 2-week Commons break. The question is, will Jody Wilson-Raybould be in the House of Commons? Will she also be attending the weekly Liberal caucus meeting on Wednesday morning, together with Jane Philpott, the former minister who also resigned, together with the MP from Ontario, Selina Caesar Chavez, who accused the Prime Minister last week of yelling at her when she told him that she wouldn't reoffer in the next election. So it's probably going to be a very interesting caucus meeting on Wednesday morning here on Parliament Hill. Will Liberal MPs accept that these 3 women remain in caucus? We're, of course, going to be following that next week.
The budget is also coming down on Tuesday. What should we expect to see?
Well, the finance minister held his traditional photo op with a pair of shoes. It wasn't a new pair of shoes this time. He decided to wear the same pair that he wore when he tabled his first budget shortly after the election in 2016. And it's also a pair that was fixed, that was repaired by a former shoemaker who decided to reorient her career. She now has her own business in the Greater Toronto area. And the finance minister said there are two clues as to the content of the budget here. First of all, it's going to be a budget of continuity, no major changes. They're still going to be working for the middle class. Expect big deficits again. And the budget is also going to have a few measures designed to help workers transition. You know, when you want to take time off of work, to go back to school, to reorient your career. So those are some of the major headlines that we're expecting to see on Tuesday when the last budget before the next election comes down. We're told it's going to have four major themes: job training, seniors, measures to help millennials, young Canadians buy a home, which is pretty complicated if you live in real estate markets like Toronto's and Vancouver's, and also pharmacare, because the Liberals have been talking for a certain number of years now about a national pharmacare program. Apparently, we're not going to get all the details in Tuesday's budget, but you know, some announcements are apparently going to be made then.
Ray, the Americans say they're working on a plan to lift the tariffs on steel and aluminum. Finally, we'll keep our fingers crossed. How close are we to seeing that become a reality?
Yeah, that's the big question. Robert Lighthizer had some encouraging words. He's, of course, the U.S. Trade Representative. He had some encouraging words this week. He said that the Trump administration is working on a plan to lift those tariffs, which are despised here by a lot of people in Canada, but also in Mexico, because they also apply to Mexican steel and aluminum. But in exchange for lifting those tariffs, the Americans clearly want something back, because Mr. Lighthizer said that they're open to the idea of lifting the tariffs, but while preserving the gains made by America. Now, what does that mean? In all likelihood, it means that the Americans would slap quotas on the amounts of steel and aluminum that countries like Canada and Mexico would be allowed to export down to the States. But of course, Canada wants none of that. They want the tariffs lifted, period. They don't want any conditions attached to that. So we'll have to see how it goes. But you know, it's encouraging to see that the U.S. administration actually is working toward the plan to get rid of those tariffs, which have been in place, as you know, since late last spring.
That's true. Ray, a couple of Tory MPs in Alberta here, we've got Michelle Rempel in Calgary and Rachel Harder here in Lethbridge, have formed petitions, online petitions, gathering tens of thousands of signatures against Bill C-71. They say it's an attack on responsible gun owners. It doesn't really attack violent gang crime and the guns, the illegal guns crossing the border. What are you hearing right now in Ottawa regarding Bill C-71? What's the latest?
Well, here we go again. It was a campaign promise made by the Liberals, and they're going ahead with it. They don't intend, from what we're hearing, they have no intention of backing down. I think that the bill is currently being studied at the committee level, either at the House level or the Senate level. So they're plowing ahead with their plan. They're not they have no intention, from what I'm hearing, of backing down. That's for sure.
Wow, interesting times ahead. Our parliamentary reporter, Ray Fillion, joining me once again from Ottawa. Thanks so much, Ray.
You bet, Hal.
We have a few too many possessions piling up in our home. Is it time to simplify and declutter? Joining us now via Skype to discuss this is Courtney Ellis. She co-pastors a Presbyterian church in Southern California and is author of the book Uncluttered: Free Your Space, Free Your Schedule, Free Your Soul. Also joining me in studio is one of our newest contributors, Catherine Furukawa. Welcome to both you ladies. Welcome to Bridge City News.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me too.
You bet. Courtney, this book comes out with a lot of your own personal struggles with clutter. You say that you felt maybe a little overwhelmed at times. Let's start with that.
I did. I was feeling overwhelmed almost all the time, and I couldn't figure out why, because my life was pretty great. I worked at a church I loved, had a good marriage, healthy kids, but I felt like I could barely breathe, and so something was wrong. I just didn't know what.
Now, our society seems to love having stuff, I know, like Personally, I like going to antique stores. I'm a bit of a Hot Wheels collector. I like to go to garage sales. How about you, Catherine?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
We've got lots of stuff.
Lots of stuff too? So maybe we tell ourselves that we need all of this. But Courtney, is it maybe a problem sometimes having a little too much stuff?
Absolutely. At a certain point, we're not owning our possessions, they're starting to own us. Everything we have takes up space. We have to care for it. We have to dust it. We have to store it. And at a certain point, more isn't more. More is actually less.
I guess maybe, yeah, because you're allocating a lot of time towards your stuff, right? So how do you go about getting rid of your stuff, you know? For many people, it's hard to let go because we have so many maybe memories attached to them. Catherine, what do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I am in the process of getting rid of stuff that's baby stuff that we don't need anymore. And there's certainly a sentimental value tied to some of that I'm not willing to give up just yet.
Like maybe the baby shoes, the baby booties?
Yeah, there's some shoes. Yeah. The rocking chair in particular is one of those things that I've spent a lot of time in, and I'm not ready to give up the rocking chair even though I don't need it anymore.
So Courtney, how do we get rid of that stuff when it has so much sentimental value?
I think that's really the question, isn't it? Because at a certain point, the object isn't just an object. It's memories, it's nostalgia, it's belief that we will one day fit into our high school jeans again, right? If we just hold on to them long enough. And so we have to start asking the question, not what should I let go of, but what do I actually need to keep? Look at what's on that shelf and don't say, what should I get rid of? But say, what do I actually use? What makes my life better? What do I actually need? And that's how I began asking the question. It wasn't a question of, should I get rid of this or not? It was a question of, do I actually need to keep this or not? And the less I had, the lighter I started to feel.
So less was more, right?
It was definitely more in all of the best ways.
So what sorts of things did you get rid of then?
I think the one thing that might resonate best with your audience is I played high school ice hockey. And so I had a pair of skates that I just wasn't going to get rid of. But I was in high school a really long time ago. And I live in Southern California now. And there's not a lot of ice. So finally I had to say, I'm going to not only let go of these skates, but let go of that person I used to be. I'm different now. I do different things with my time, and that's okay. And these skates can bless someone else. Used hockey equipment, that's, you know, we've all benefited from that at some point. So to let those skates go and develop more room for other things. And what's the rule of thumb
sometimes too, if you haven't used something in a year, you know, you can donate it, maybe throw it away. How about you, Catherine? Do you guys have that rule at home as well?
Yeah, definitely. We recently, well, I guess not recently now, a year and a half ago moved, and I'm now at the point going, okay, if I haven't used it since we moved, it's time to get rid of it. So the piles have started to accumulate, and I'm ready to start giving stuff away.
Do you do garage sales as well?
I haven't yet.
Oh, they're fun.
I like going to garage sales, so I guess.
So you're collecting more stuff,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Well, let me ask you something, Courtney. When it comes to shopping, a lot of us like to shop. Like for me, I like to shop for chocolate. I'm a bit of a chocoholic. What is your weakness when it comes to shopping?
Oh, I've got a chocolate thing. I'm right there with you. Okay. I think my weakness is the clearance rack at the department store. So it's okay to buy a new sweater if it's only $10 or only $5, right? I'm quite a bargain hunter. But each of those things, again, it takes time, it takes care, it takes effort. And I needed to start asking the question, why do I want to do this impulse shopping? What is so fun for me about this? What am I really hungry for? And it wasn't that I was hungry for a sweater, it's that I was hungry for something new. But it's not wrong. Yeah, exactly. And the chocolate is great because you consume it and then it's gone. It doesn't take up room. It doesn't add clutter. So you should just keep buying the chocolate. I'm all for that.
Okay. Catherine, how about you? What are some of your weaknesses? About shopping?
I'm right with Courtney. I'm all about a good deal. And so that sale rack is definitely my weakness. I like shoes. I like clothes. And
you're looking out for the kids too, your girls, right?
Yes.
Like
always.
back to school supplies?
Yep. Always looking out for those kids too, making sure. And seasons change, especially up here. Our seasons are so diverse that you need a completely different wardrobe for every season.
You know, a big part of clutter is not necessarily physical things, but sometimes doing too many things too, cluttering up our lives. Sometimes they're good things, but they can add up. So how can we, Courtney, kind of sort out what is necessary and what's not necessarily necessary?
That's a great way to put it, because too much of a good thing is too much, and then it's no longer a good thing. And for me, those feelings of being overwhelmed were less about the physical clutter, even though I had to get rid of things like the hockey skates, and more about my schedule. It was just packed to the gills. I didn't have time to breathe. And so I had to start saying, not just what is a good thing to do, but what does God have for me in this season? Because our lives go through these cycles of different seasons. I have young kids, and so apparently sleep is not in the cards for me right now in this season. But that meant I needed to have fewer activities so that I had time to recharge and rejuvenate. Good things are good things, but when there are too many of them, they wear us down and they wear us out. And that's not how God wants us to live. God's call is a call to freedom and to life and to hope and to peace, and not to running ourselves ragged, not for God and not for anyone.
And you have to spend more time with God as well when you unclutter, get rid of a lot of the other things in your lives. But you've got young children now, Catherine. They take up a lot of your time. Let's talk a bit about that.
Yeah, they definitely do. I mean, we've got ballet to get to, and swimming, and skating, and school. So it's always busy with kids. And in our house, we've tried to make our weekends sacred because my husband's not working. And so it's very rare that we would plan something on a Saturday or Sunday. Those are sacred family times that we try to keep sacred. I mean, obviously there's the odd thing that pops up, but during the day on Saturday and Sunday, we try to keep those times free in our lives because that's something for us that's important.
Okay, I've got a question for both of you ladies. If you had to give something up that you're participating in your community or your church to try and make more time to rejuvenate your body, mind, and spirit and spend more time with God, what would be that one thing you would give up? I'll start with you, Catherine.
Oh, man. I don't know.
Binge watching, maybe your
favorite
TV show?
That would be it.
Yeah.
Netflix. I'd have to give up Netflix, I think.
Okay. Courtney, how about you? What would you give up?
I'm just going to stop cleaning the house.
Okay.
I can get on board with that one too.
Well, your hubby can
that
help
would
you
be
out with
great,
that, right?
wouldn't it? That would be great. No, I think that often we give away our time in these little bits. It's less, I need to give up swim lessons, and it's more, if I don't log onto my phone all the time throughout the day, that adds up to hours. Hours of brain space, hours of prayer time, hours of being able to connect with my husband, with my friends. And one of the things the book talks about is paring down our digital connection, so that it's not that a cell phone is bad. I have a smartphone that I use. But when we create boundaries around that, suddenly we get a lot of our time back.
You know, that's a good point. I know a lot of people spend hours upon hours on Facebook or Twitter. They're tweeting, they're hanging out with the trolls, or they're going on Instagram, or whatever the case, Pinterest, getting a new recipe perhaps. So how do you try and limit yourself and put those limits or boundaries within yourself and your family? How do you do that when it comes to social media?
It's difficult, isn't it? Because there are 1,000 engineers on the other side of that screen. Often we just think it's us and our weak willpower, just us versus the cell phone, but it's not. There are so many people on the other side that make money if we click or scroll or log on. And so what I've found is I have to create some hurdles for me to get online. So my smartphone doesn't have an internet browser anymore. I have to be at an actual computer to get on social media, which means when I'm out, I don't have to think, oh, I shouldn't get on Facebook. I just can't get on Facebook. And suddenly I'm noticing my kids and I'm talking to my neighbor, and I don't have to make myself do it. It's just been done for me. And that's been part of the key for me in reducing that decision fatigue.
That's wonderful. That's great, putting those kind of parameters around your social media. Catherine, how about for you?
I've done the same thing. I haven't currently, but I have before taken Facebook and Instagram off my phone so that I have to, same thing, on a computer or on an iPad, which I've certainly noticed that difference as well, that you have to be intentional about logging on instead of it being mindless. But at the moment, I will confess that I have everything, the app right on my phone, and the access is easy in there, and
Little
certainly knows
FaceTime
it.
and Messenger.
Yeah, always.
Courtney, can you explain what hospitality has to do with uncluttering our lives? Is because that just sounds like a lot more work.
It does, doesn't it? I think I set out to write this book because I was overwhelmed and I needed less in my life. And the biggest surprise was that as I pared down, as I got rid of unnecessary possessions and unnecessary events and did less in the digital world, God started to fill my open hands with more wonderful things. So the gift of Sabbath, the gift of hospitality, the gift of connecting with my neighbors and my friends in deeper ways. Because it isn't that God wants us to have less. It's that when our hands are full, God can't give us these good gifts. And so the book started out being about less and ended up being about more. Because when we're not so stressed out about taking care of our possessions, our homes, making everything perfect, it's easier to invite other people in and say, just come in, have dinner, right? Rather than, well, you can come over in 2 weeks because there are a lot of Legos on the floor right now.
So what are some practical ways you've taught your kids to embrace godly simplicity?
You know, our kids have really flourished when we've started practicing Sabbath more regularly. I love that Catherine talked about the weekends being sacred. For us, my husband and I are pastors, so usually it's Friday or Saturday, but we say on that day, we're going to rest and we're going to play and we're going to worship, and you get donuts. And so the kids love Sabbath because Sabbath means donuts. But we celebrate each other and we're able to rest because we're not running from one thing to the next all day long. And it's been a great gift, and they look forward to it every week. Uninterrupted time with mom and dad. It's a gift.
So Catherine, how about you? Have you taught your kids to really embrace godly simplicity?
I would say probably not intentionally. They know that Sunday is a day where
Day of rest?
Yeah, a day
Worship?
of rest. We go to church, we come home, we spend time as a family. We often have my parents or my husband's parents over for dinner that night, and it's just a family day for us. I don't know that we've necessarily intentionally called it a Sabbath, which probably we should start introducing that as part of our language in our home, that this is why we're doing this, and it's a godly principle that we need to exercise in our home.
Amen. So Courtney, let me ask you something. What are some practical ways you've taught your kids to basically be generous with finances? And does that have a way of uncluttering our life too, for yourselves and for your children?
Absolutely. When we start understanding everything we have as a gift, it becomes much more easy to be generous, to practice generosity. My oldest son is almost 6 years old, and he doesn't understand money as much as he understands toys. So we've started to say, when you have more than you need of something, it's great to share it with someone. And he went through his Matchbox car collection and said, I don't play with all these. Maybe someone else would like them. Yeah, we'll send them to you. But we walked down the block and he offered them to a friend and, taught him to live life with open hands, that he didn't have to give away his most special car. But there were a few that were still in great shape that he didn't play with as much. And can he be generous with those? Yeah, he can. And it lit him up. It lit up that neighbor kid. And he learned a lesson about the God who is generous with us.
I'll let you in on a little secret. Some of these classic cars, like some of the classic Hot Wheels from the late 60s, early 70s, they're going for over $100,000 each now. So
wow. So we should go get those back.
And they don't take up a lot of space. You're not going to feel too cluttered with those little Hot Wheels, right? So let me ask you something.
Not until you get a lot of them.
Well, that's true too. I've only got about 50 or 60. But anyway, are you completely uncluttered now, or is it still an ongoing journey for yourself?
It is a constant process. It's a continual process because, we live in the Western world where we live in a land of abundance. There's just a lot of stuff, and we don't even have to spend a lot to get a lot of stuff. The dollar store can give you a lot of stuff. And so it's a constant process. We're forever taking things to the thrift store. We're forever saying, does this need to stay or can it go? But that's part of the lesson. If we could just do it once and be done, we wouldn't need to rely on God in the same way. But this is a dance where God is continually teaching us and calling us forth. But I love the cover of the book because it encapsulates this idea that we're lighter when we undertake this journey, that it lifts this burden off of us. And that's what we've learned, that it's okay that it's never over because there are lessons all along the way.
So Catherine, you talked a little bit earlier about how you're uncluttering some of your kids' clothes, but at the same time, the girls are little, they like toys, they like a lot of stuff too. Maybe you're not quite at that stage in your life yet for you and your family where you're going to unclutter. It's more like you're collecting some things right now.
We are, definitely some. We try, though, to be diligent about as we outgrow toys, to pass them on. At my daughter's school, they actually had a used toy sale right after Christmas, which was great. So all the kids brought in toys, and then they sold them similar to a garage sale at the school, and it was a great way to unload some stuff. Unfortunately, we also sent a loonie to school with our daughter, so she came home with some stuff. But We definitely unloaded more than she came home with, so I guess overall it was a win.
Oh, and that's right. Courtney Ellis, author of Uncluttered, Free Your Space, Free Your Schedule, Free Your Soul, and Catherine Furukawa, one of our regular contributors now with BCN. Ladies, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for having me.
On behalf of all of us here at BCN, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless, unclutter, and have a great night.